whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like, you tell the truth and then your story is connecting. People are really gratified to hear like, It's actually hard for you too." They kind of lower their voice, right? Like, "It's hard for you
Yeah.
too. It's hard for me." So, I don't know, I think it's keep adapting, keep telling the truth, keep searching for my joy, like, that the optimism thing, like, I don't think I'm this wild-eyed optimist anymore, but I do think I'm still a joy seeker. I
Mhm.
really wanna be happy. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Well, I'm an enthusiast, I'm a pleasure seeker. I love to experience joy, and so I just keep
Mhm.
where can I find that? Where is that? Where are the glimmers of that even when it was really, really bad? Where was the little moments of connection and joy? And then that keeps me moving.
Before we dive in, let me tell you about the book that started a podcasting revolution, Make Every Podcast Want You. It is not just a bestseller, it is a 2-time gold medalist, baby. This book is your ultimate guide to landing dream podcast interviews, building authority authentically, and making your voice the one they remember. If you've got a message and a mission, this is your mic drop moment. Grab your copy today in the link below and step into the spotlight that you were born for.
Welcome to the Communication Queens podcast for the visionary leaders, speakers, service providers, and podcasters who are looking to stand out sharing their story. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, former screenwriter turned master communications coach. On this podcast, I'll be coaching you on how to share your own transformation story so that you increase your visibility, influence, and income on podcast interviews. Let's get your voice heard. Hello and welcome back to the Communication Queen podcast. I am so excited because today we have the multi-hyphenate and talented Emmy-nominated director, producer, motivational speaker, and co-founder of Powerhouse, Tricia Creason-Valencia, on the show with us.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome, Queen. You and I met through the amazing April of Light Beamers, and as we were doing our conversation beforehand that I do with all of my guests, where I'm like, let's figure out like what's the angle for the show. And I know that you as a documentary producer, I'm sure have gone through many iterations of like, what's our angle with this story that would like, what's the point? And especially as you're navigating doing more motivational speaking and, co-founding Powerhouse, like when you look at the story, what are the questions that you like to ask yourself to find where the story really is, as far as like what's going to really serve the audience?
So, one of the reasons that I was so excited to talk with you today is that you are in your work just beyond where I am in my preparedness. And I really like to do that to myself. It's like, I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to go on the podcast with Kimberly, and I'm not quite ready. And I find that sort of scary place to be really invigorating. I love a deadline. I love, just to be in like a learning process. So, I've been working as a keynote speaker for about a year, and I launched this space that I'm in, which is Powerhouse, which is a creative workspace for women in downtown San Jose, where I live, also a year ago. So I feel like I've got a little bit of traction on kind of where I'm headed, but I'm sort of furiously behind the scenes working on um, all of the sort of like marketing and business sides and, furiously rewriting my bio and making a demo reel, putting up my website. I've kind of done all of those things to reach this state, but I want to start figuring out like, how do I frame my story in a way that is going to help me really spread my message? And I am a multi-hyphenate, like you said, so I don't really want to only focus on having been a documentary filmmaker. My work is imbued with that lens all the time. I'm always thinking about representation of women, people of color, storytelling, women's stories, but it's not all I want to talk about at this point in my sort of, I say I'm like in my crone era where I'm sort of an older, my children are teens and young adults. I've learned a lot. I'm in lots of communities that overlap. And I want to have my keynote speaking really begin to integrate more of those elements. So I came to you being like, oh, if I could be on many, many podcasts, that could really help me define my story and find these various audiences in a way that feels really clear to me. So it's kind of integrating all these different parts of who I am and figuring out how to talk about that, how to pitch that, how to use that to get more opportunities and kind of find the right audiences. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
I think the beautiful thing with multi-hyphenates, it's probably my favorite thing about being a multi-hyphenate, is there's so many roles that you've played and that you've played, and I say this as one
Mhm.
myself, where there's so many avenues of different stories of quote unquote niches that you could go down, and it's really exploratory in finding which ones work. Like for a long time, I
Right.
started going on a lot of bulimia recovery, eating disorder recovery podcasts simply because that was just a huge part of my story. And then after a while, that stopped feeling like it was super aligned with what I'm doing. I'll probably go back on them again when I finish my next book, all about financial bulimia. That being able to discern, like, there's so many avenues of your story, Trisha, that you have nearly adult children. Like you are a very successful producer and you've had that Emmy nomination that like so many in the industry crave. And then I think what I'm really interested about is like, why did you choose to shift and pivot? Like, what was it about? Was it the industry as a whole? Was it you're just like, I did that, achieved that. And now it's like, what next? What big scary thing can I do?
Yeah.
I'm interested in that part of your story.
So almost the entire course of my filmmaking career, I've also been a mother. They sort of parallel each other. I got my MFA in filmmaking, started working as a full-time lecturer at Drexel University, and in the same year adopted my daughter, my first child. So from jump, I've had to figure out like, how do I do all these things at once? How do I be a working mama? How do I spend 14 to 16 hours a day on a set? How do I generate enough income to live in between projects? How do I fundraise for those projects, right? Sort of all of those pulls that kind of lifestyle requires. And I did it, and I did it really successfully for a very long time and felt like I was able to give my kids enough of the energy and attention that I really wanted to commit to giving them. And I've also always been a teacher. I got my MFA because I wanted to be able to teach at the highest level, meaning university down to whatever, to high school, to community-based groups. Teaching is just as vital to me as filmmaking. I love it. It is absolutely part of my passion and part of my calling. So I've taught film and video production, film history, feminist film history. I've got experimental filmmaking, all sort of drawing on my personal making, but then integrating it into the curriculum and the classroom. So I taught at the university level for a long, long, long time. Was doing that until the pandemic hit. So the pandemic caused a lot of rejiggering and redefining for so many of us. But literally, I had an experimental film class that puts on a fantastic show every year where we take over a studio and they build installations and they project their work. And it's just like really deep and rich and personal work that they've created. That show got canceled the first week that everything shut down. They were like, the show's canceled. And I went into the next quarter at the university where I was teaching being like, online. And I was like, I hate this. This is not teaching. I want to be in the field with my students. I'm looking through the camera with them. I'm in the editing suite. We're hitting buttons together. We're listening to soundtracks. Like it's a very hands-on kind of vibrant way of teaching. And all of a sudden it was through a computer screen. So I had to kind of be like, all right, what am I doing here? And I left the university at the very beginning of the pandemic and was like, all right, I'm not going to do that form of teaching anymore. So what's my bread and butter career going to look like? And what is my personal work going to look like? Am I going to keep making, how am I going to do this? Fundamentally, I wasn't sure. So I stopped being a full-time lecturer and did a little bit of Zoom teaching because that was kind of what was available, and continued to really not like it. I still don't like it. It's just not the, face to face that
Yep.
I care about. And in terms of my film work, what I was able to do was find work that was more like nonprofit production work. I was
Mhm.
affiliated with some local nonprofits here, helping make really beautiful pieces that were about social justice, storytelling, families, all the stuff that I care about, immigration reform, stuff I have done before. I liked it. I did a big project called the Womanhood Project where we were featuring women who were cannery workers in my town. I love archival footage. I love historic stuff. So I was still getting work, but I was getting tired. There wasn't enough sort of for all the labor and all the work that that kind of production was taking. Like it just wasn't feeding my soul in the same way. And I have to say, I got really tired of doing client work. If someone dropped $2 million in my lap tomorrow and was like, make your own feature documentary, I'd go right back to it. Believe me, I'd be like, great, there are no barriers now. And I'm going to put together my own fantastic team and I'm going to make an amazing film. But that doesn't tend to happen.
Far between.
Right? I was like, all right, I'm really weary of the constant fundraising and trying to figure out how to make the next feature doc. I'm getting weary of doing client work for documentaries as much as I love the social justice issues that I get to address. And teaching is no longer available to me in the way that I want it to be. So what am I doing now? Right? And that sort of not knowingness into just a period of huge transition and, to be honest with you, a lot of pain and a lot of difficulty for my kids who at that time were teenagers. So they, as I lost being a teacher, they lost being students. Their schools completely shut down. Both of my kids were really involved in, my daughter is a roller derby skater, as was I. So that was like our
That's
shared
so
sport.
cool.
Yeah, but roller derby completely stopped. My son was a musical theater kid. It all completely stopped. So everything in our house needed to be redefined and figured out all over again, right? So there was a chunk of time during the pandemic where I was just reeling and trying to figure out, like, how do I help my kids survive this? And what are we doing? We decided to homeschool our son because sitting on Zoom, he was going into the 8th grade, was a miserable experience. So I got to have this kind of period of like rest and reflection under miserable circumstances, right? My kids were really deeply unhappy. I was really unhappy. A massive extrovert. So to not be allowed to be around people was, I kept trying to explain, my husband's an introvert. I kept trying to explain, like, no, you don't understand. This is
I
like,
live for people.
oh, difficult and depressing. And I am so depleted of my energy and my life force because I don't get to be around people. So just to say that, like, it was an external force that really kind of took away a lot of the things I knew how to do and loved how to do and got paid to do,
Mm-hmm.
and had to figure out what am I going to do next? What am I going to do differently?
I think that's the hard and the beautiful part of the pandemic was that it really did bring to light systemic change from the inside out of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm satisfied with this, but like, what could we do this? How could we do this, but better?
Yeah,
And I think just to your story, there's this theme of being able to be in the messiness of the messy middle and
yes,
yet still being able to take action. And I think that that's a through line that actually most people don't have. And I've been coaching leaders for 9 years, and there are so many people who wait for the stars to be aligned and to have all the information. And sometimes that paralyzes them in analysis paralysis rather
right.
than actually being able to say, I'm just going to take the next action and the clarity will come through the action.
Absolutely. And I do think you really nailed there a part of my personality. When I'm at my best, I'm very brave. I like experimentation. I don't mind if I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm not a control freak in that way. I'm very
Mhm.
detail oriented. I'm very perfectionistic. Like, I really care about the quality of my work, but I'm also like, I come from experimental filmmaking, right? I'm like, who knows? I'm going to crush this film up in a can and go into a dark room and develop it with degraded chemicals and see what happens, right? That was my sort of grounding as a filmmaker when I first started. And I love that. I love the not knowing. Now, I got to say, I can't skip over the messy middle where I was quite inert. I was
Mm.
very, very, very depressed. Um, I didn't take action immediately in that sort of like 4-year period of the pandemic after everything really shut down. Things got really difficult and painful with my older daughter in particular. She was 16 when the pandemic started, and she's given me permission to talk about this. But she entered a phase of very intense mental illness during the pandemic. And so for a good chunk of time, I was trying to work with her, but she did not want to work with me. Both my kids joined our family through adoption. So their individuation, which would have been happening naturally and would have been complicated, and I knew that as an adoptive mom, there's a lot of hard stuff about who am I and who's my real family and you're not my real mom. And she was getting in touch with her birth family at that time. That would have been hard, but I was ready. Like I knew that when I adopted my kids at birth, that this was going to be a hard road. And I was in all the adoption support groups and I read all the books. But the pandemic added this layer of pain and crisis to her individuation. She ended up becoming a drug addict and she ended up running away from home during the pandemic. I can fast forward and say that she's stable and safe and she lives nearby and she's okay. But there was a long period of time during the pandemic when I was just operating in like this really heightened crisis mode and a really depressed, inert mode where there'd be full days where I would just really sit on the couch. I don't know what I was doing. And then my husband would come back from work and I'd be like, it was a bad day, right? I was not well. So figuring out how to get myself out of that in these last couple of years has been exactly this process that we're talking about. Like, I have to do something differently to survive here. I need to learn how to parent this child and what she currently is going through. And I'm a reader. I drew upon really good books for that, sort of starting to navigate that piece of it. Megan Leahy, who is a parenting columnist for the Washington Post, her book, Parenting Outside the Lines, my husband and I would sit and like read it aloud to each other. And then we were able to actually get Megan to be our parenting coach for a chunk of time during the pandemic. And it was
Wow.
unbelievable. Like her message to me fundamentally again and again and again was, you just need to stay connected. It doesn't matter what that looks like. It doesn't matter. That is the only thing that's going to get you through this, is staying connected. So when my daughter was homeless and would ask to get together for dinner because she needed food, and my husband and I were like, we wanted to try to convince her to come home and break up with the bad boyfriend. And, we had all this energy, and Megan would be like, go to dinner and just be with her and then call it and go on your way and just keep showing up and just keep showing up and stay connected. And so that's what we did. And I can tell you on the other side of it, it has not been easy. We also joined NAMI, which is a support community for folks who are family members of people with mental illness. Like, we had to do a lot of labor to figure out how to deal with this new, situation that may have arisen without the pandemic, but probably not nearly as dramatically as it did, right? It was just this really intensified time. So yeah, there was a period in there that was very, very, very dark and very bleak. And the other thing that Megan said to me at that time was that I needed to go back to playing sports. I'm an athlete. I've played sports my whole life. Started roller derby when I was 44, and I played that for several years. And then now I play softball, and I just this summer went and competed at the women's amateur softball World Series. I've been playing baseball since I was 8 years old. So sports have always been really central to my health, my well-being, frankly, getting out my aggression. I am an aggressive person, and it is a safe way for me to slam into people productively. That's sanctioned, right? So I had to start finding who's my support community? Who's my new support community? What am I going to get from this NAMI community? How do I go back to playing sports? Everything was shut down. And I found a masked basketball game that was happening again. And I started, playing pickup basketball again. I just had to start. I had to start. And so those are the kinds of things that I started doing to draw myself back to life. And I have a really strong friendship group. We've lived in this community for about 20 years, since my daughter was a baby. And my friendship circle is vast. And those women, they showed up. They brought me food. They came into the house when I was too depressed to function, and they looked around and they did the dishes. No pressure, no big thing. Just, I'm here. Let me help with that. And then boom, they were gone. So I had people who kept showing up throughout that. And I knew that it was okay. I had a girlfriend that would always take me on a walk. She's a social worker by profession, so she's really good at it. But she's just my friend, right? And we would just walk around the rose garden, and I would talk and I would cry, and I would talk and I would cry. So all of those factors kind of combined up for me to be like, okay, you got to start moving again. You have to take care of yourself. All that BS people say about you got to put your mask on first. I was like, I don't even know where the mask is.
I was like, what mask? Which?
Right. I'm like, I'm really not happy about masks anymore because of the pandemic. What the hell?
A
Right.
metaphor that I like.
I hate it.
There's so many ways I want to go with, like, first of all, thank you for your vulnerability and your transparency and the richness of your story that you shared. And I want to highlight a couple things for our listeners because one, I've had this with certain stories that I've shared about my father and my experiences growing up. There are certain stories that I was hesitant to share simply because he was alive. That now that he's passed, I'm very openly share them and I'm okay with it. And he also gave me permission while he was alive. He said, "I want you to share our story," and I said, "I will." Just there's certain labels that are associated with things that he did to me that I'm like, I don't want you to live that label in life because
Yeah.
that's not who you fully are. But the permissiveness of being able to ask your daughter, and I think that that's so beautiful that you asked her and that you have that permission, that you have that relationship. Because I mean, I've seen things on TikTok and Instagram and all the places of parents that don't ask permission for their kids, to share things with their kids. My 3-year-old even will be like, "Mommy, picture, but don't don't show people." And I said, "Okay." Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's aware that
Yeah.
there's certain things, like I'm not taking pictures of my kids and posting them like farting on the
Yeah.
interwebs because there's just a level of respect I think that needs to be had for children and adult children of the boundaries of what that is. And I so deeply admire the fact that you have that level of respect with your children to
Thank
then
you.
also be able to share those sides of what you experienced and went through.
I want to interject and say
Yeah.
part of what that comes from for me is being an adoptive mom. There was always curiosity about their stories when they were little. And
Mhm.
I really clearly from the beginning was like, it's their story to tell, not mine. So I was
Mhm.
in a culture and in a community that was like, it's not my story to tell. How they came to live with my family, what their birth family's like, was there trauma in their story? I didn't get to tell that story. I chose not to tell that story. So there was like this bedrock of consent. Now, they will tell you 1,000 times over that I told way too much as they were getting in that middle age, like, 12, 13. They're like, "Mom, I saw one of your friends and she totally knows me from your Facebook and it's super irritating." So I think I did pendulum swing because I was trying to find a public forum where I could talk about how freaking hard it was to be a mom. And so I would post about challenges and difficulties and battles. My daughter is dyslexic and has
Mhm.
ADHD. And so I was battling school systems and I was talking about that publicly on my Facebook and in other contexts. My son was this beautiful musical theater star and I was just really proud of him, but I would post all kinds of stuff about him. And they both at different points were like, "Cool it. I don't want you to post about me anymore." And so they feel like I did transgress the consent
Mhm.
levels of respect that they deserved at certain points. And I will say that I really course corrected. And if you look at my social media for the last several years, there's very little about my kids.
Mhm.
Became much more about sort of like me and my personal journey and my art and my healing and my work. And now that we're all kind of in a happier, healthier place, they have given me permission again. Like my son is now a hardcore musician and I'll be like, "Can I post about your gig?" Or he put out an album or there was a newspaper article about him and he'll smile and be like, "Yeah, you can share that," or like a few photos of him on stage now. And my daughter, like I really knew that I had to have a real conversation with her because it's part of my keynote journey at
Mhm.
this point, right? I'm talking a ton about mental health. I'm talking about creativity and mental health. I talk about my work with my students, who I now teach at a high school, and how they
Mhm.
use art and personal narrative filmmaking for their mental health. But it's like, boy, am I approaching it differently now. And I knew I couldn't get much further along in this keynote stuff without her explicitly saying it was okay to talk about her story, our story,
Yeah.
but her story, right? So thank you for saying I'm good at it. And I got to say, I messed up a lot.
And that's how you became good at it. And I think that that's the thing is, like, for anything is that we become good at, most often we've had some serious mess ups in
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
past. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
they
definitely
held me
tripped over.
accountable. They were like, "Man, you've gotta back off. You cannot do that." And I was like, and it's really hard to, like, unpack what's theirs and what's mine when it's a family
Mhm.
system, and I'm talking about my mothering journey
And it's your role. Yeah.
right? But they're obviously embedded in that and an intricate part of that. And like, I find that challenging when you say, like, what are some of the challenges I'm approaching right now in my career as a motivational speaker? It's how to tell a story that's true to me, but has a lot of detail and emotional beats that include my kids, include my partner, include my mother. We haven't even talked about that piece, but my mother has dementia. And I'm very sandwich generation with her now. And that's also part of my talking about, like, what does it mean to be a caregiver to her? What does it mean to be experiencing this anticipatory grief as she's getting sicker and sicker? And that's the stuff that I'm really excited to talk about in the speaking that I'm doing. And it's a lot of with the art that I'm making now, the story, I'm doing audio stories, I'm doing a lot of collage work, I'm doing personal work that I don't intend to share. I'm doing it for me,
Mhm.
which is really different for me as someone that's made art to go on TV, right? It's like I'm
Yep.
making it for me. And if I choose to share it in one context or another, I might, but I'm not making it to share. Anyway,
I
it
completely understand that from the form of fitness, of having my first my first business is, that supported my career in screenwriting was freelance Pilates. And I taught Pilates. I had my own private studio in LA and I have all the equipment. And sometimes I'll share a video of myself doing fitness, but I'm like, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. It's like it's like fitness is still a part of my life, but it's not the thing that I want highlighted because
yeah.
like what I see is a holistic picture. And this is why like working with visionaries like yourself and being able to have dialogue with visionaries about being the multi-hyphenate. What would you say is that through line of your own story? What is that chunked up piece that combines all these different roles? Because you're in the sandwich role of parenting your parent and parenting your children and pivoting careers, and like there's so many ands that you're in the middle of. When you look at the past, what would you say is the purpose of all of those?
I mean, I feel like I am an optimist, and I feel like before I call it like sort of the before times when things so dramatically got difficult for my family, including the onset of my mom's dementia, my daughter's mental health struggles, all the stuff. In the before times, I think I was really just kind of an optimist who believed that I could accomplish anything with hard work and community and passion. I really built this ecosystem of support for myself, for my work, for my kids, in my community. And I just felt like everything would be okay. And then in the last 5 years, I've come to a different place where it's like, everything may not be okay. Huh. So I've had to do this like really rapid growth period of redefining the way that I think about my relationship to my own happiness, my own career trajectory, my own mothering journey. And it's taken like a really radical reforming of the way that I used to just say, like, love is enough. I really, really believed that love was enough, that if I loved my kids hard enough, they'd be okay, even though they had adoption trauma, even though they might encounter real life difficulties, it would be fine because I loved them. And then I learned that it wasn't enough to just love them, right? So then I had to be like, okay, well, what resources have I put in place over all these years to help our entire family through this? Oh, there's the family that's helped raise my kid. They're going to take my daughter in right now because she can't live at home. I'm going to keep doing this like personal growth work where I work with coaches and they help me kind of rejigger and redefine. So I think the big through line for me is like, I was this fearless optimist that thought I could handle anything. And then I got kind of crushed. And it was like, this is way harder than I could have ever imagined. And maybe it's like a middle-aged perspective. I look at my husband sometimes and I'm like, am I just going to always know that it's this hard? Or do you think I'll go back to that sort of like elevated optimism I used to have? And I don't know. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. Like I'm going to feel stronger and better able to cope at it. But I also get it, how much pain and grief is present. Life is pain. And I would not have said that 5 years ago. I wouldn't have. So I think the through line is like, what's my adaptability? What's my ability to figure out a new way of being? What's my ability to tell the truth, to be authentic? Like I've always been that at every phase of my life. And I think when I tell the truth, which includes all the hard stuff, all the nitty gritty, all the fuck ups, all the pieces that are difficult, people resonate with that. And by people, I mean like my people, my friends, my community, my coworkers, like it's concentric circles of support where people are like, yeah, you're right. And then other people are like, tell me more about that. Cause I also have a disabled kid that I'm trying to help navigate the school system or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like, you tell the truth and then your story is connecting. People are really gratified to hear like, it's actually hard for you too. They kind of lower their voice, right? Like, it's hard for you
Yeah.
too. It's hard for me. So I don't know. I think it's keep adapting, keep telling the truth, keep searching for my joy. Like that, the optimism thing. Like, I don't think I'm this wild-eyed optimist anymore, but I do think I'm still a joy seeker. I
Mhm.
really want to be happy. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Well, I'm an enthusiast. I'm a pleasure seeker. I love to experience joy. And so I just keep,
Mhm.
where can I find that? Where is that? Where are the glimmers of that? Even when it was really, really bad, where was the little moments of connection and joy? And then that keeps me moving. Does that answer that question?
Hey, that's the through line your to all your keynotes and definitely for your brand. And I think that that's something that in my pre-research of you, I think that that's something that could be greater, like highlighted to a greater degree, simply because you have faced so much resilience, like so much
Mhm.
that has required you to source a new level of resilience within
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Not just from a motivational quote of like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you can do it too. It's like, no, I like literally on like you paint a picture so well of like on the couch, here I am, don't know what the fuck I did today, because that was my day. And that truth and bare bones honesty. I think that there's something of a rawness that you bring to how you communicate. And the fact that you can be the chameleon into so many different areas. And I don't mean chameleon as in like change yourself, but you can adapt your story to whatever audience, whether you're speaking to adoptive parents, whether you're speaking to parents of kids with mental health issues or parents of kid neurodivergent children, or you're speaking to filmmakers, or you're speaking to just mothers in general who just like moms, we get it. Like we
Mhm.
get that it's not the easiest journey, or you're speaking to community builders, or you're speaking to DEI boards and communities and HR. Like you can adapt each part of your story to that audience because you're so multifaceted. And like, I don't see being multifaceted as being a hindrance, actually. The only challenge is like chunking up to like what that core message is. But the
Yeah.
core message has to do some level of rawness that you bring that's very much like to me, I see the rawness that you bring to documentary filmmaking and
Mhm.
what documentary filmmaking highlights, like your film Stable Life, like that, what you shared with me about the film, about how you had one perception going in and then it
Mhm.
shifted in
Yeah.
the middle. And I think that that's a huge piece. That's like part of life too. It's like we have a huge identity of who we think we are. And then in the middle somewhere or multiple middle as we
Yeah.
transform and grow, we're going to have those moments where our identity is going to completely shift. And there's something in there of the rawness that you brought into documentary filmmaking and the rawness that you bring to real life and your real life storytelling, as well as the power of the pivot.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. Yeah, I think one of the things that I love to really do in my creativity workshops that I facilitate is very quickly get people because they show up because they're ready. They want to do storytelling. They want to learn some element of audio or video production. Maybe we're going to do in collage art. It varies depending on the context,
Mhm.
but people show up because they want to be vulnerable. I mean, I sort of joke like if someone or several someones in this room haven't cried by the end of this workshop, I have not done my job. Because those are the spaces that we need to create where people can truly just be like, whatever it is, you can cry from joy, you can cry from frustration, you can cry out of sadness, whatever the thing is, but like to really allow yourself to let that emotion well up, right? And my particular modality happens to be art and creativity, that sort of like community building through that form of communication. But I just want that to happen in multiple places because I just keep showing up and telling the truth. And some people are freaked out by that and they're not going to be my good friends.
Nor will they be your audience, nor will they be the people paying you for keynotes, because
Right. Right.
it's the ones who will be like, oh my God, thank you for your rawness. Thank you for your truth serum. Thank you for the medicine that you've provided of your story, because now I feel seen and I don't feel so alone.
And that's everything to me. If someone says to me after they've been to one of my keynotes, now I feel seen, bam, right? Like I did it. That was my goal. That was my goal.
Yeah. And I think that you have a way of communicating, just how you've done in this podcast, is you have a way of painting such a fully embodied picture. And I love that because, I mean, you come from a filmmaking background, but you are able to do it with your words, even without lights and cameras. And I mean, we have lights and cameras, but it's not like the full production of like showing. We can
Right.
picture what's actually happening. We see that mother. And maybe at times we've been that mother. I know I have, where I'm like, what the fuck did I do with my day? Like, just in that state of like, oh my God, my kids are suffering or my kids are going through a challenge. And I don't know, like the incapacitating feeling that it feels like, the almost helpless feeling that you can have
Right.
when you see your kids suffering and you're like, I just want to love them through it, but it's not enough.
To take away their pain. And I think what I've
Hmm.
realized is I cannot. I can help them face their pain. I can help them manage it. I can help them process it, move through it. And that's really different. That took me many, many years of mothering to figure out that I cannot protect them from life's vicissitudes. It's going to happen. And parallel me to myself. It's like, oh, okay, I learned this concept through NAMI of radical acceptance when we were thinking about my daughter's, mental illness journey. And I so badly wanted to fix it. And I was stuck in a place of reactivity and sort of like panic if there were big incidents that happened, if she got hospitalized again. Like I was sort of churning and full of energy, but I wasn't really doing much good because I was just so frantic, right? And so this
Mhm.
radical acceptance idea was, listen, it is. This is what is happening right now, which was very hard for me. I wanted to be like, no, 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 right? You feel like
The fixer in us.
so scary to just be like, okay, this is what it is right now. And all I can control are my reactions to it. I can control my behaviors. I can control that I can continue to show up for my kid. I can keep some modicum of slow hope. I believe things will get better, but I am not going to foreground that as like things really need to get better, right? It's just sort of like, I'm going to stay hopeful. I'm going to stay. This is like the new version of my optimism. It's
Mhm.
not right in front, but it's back there in the back of my mind and certainly in my heart. But I had to really figure out how to do that. And like, that's kind of a Buddhist concept. And I am not Buddhist, right? I am not calm. I am not Zen. I am high energy. I am emotional. I am passionate. I'm a big talker. I love my kids really fiercely, right? But I
Mhm.
had to learn like, hey, you got to modulate that. And you need to show up with a sense of calm and presence for them and for you. And that's the journey I've been on for about the last year, is like really trying to integrate that idea of like radical acceptance. I went to a workshop at a conference that I spoke at. I attended a workshop and someone framed it as gentle acceptance.
Mm.
And that felt better to me. Like I was like, oh, gentle. Okay. Like radical feels radical, like 100% black and white thinking. And I'm trying not to do that anymore. I'm trying to be like, this is gray. There's nuances
Mhm.
to all of this. Yes, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Life is pain, right? Like all these ideas about
Mhm.
like, this is who we are. This is how we are on our mental health journeys, on our journeys. So gentle acceptance was like, Tricia, give yourself some grace. Like you have done enough. You've worked really, really hard to stay in it. I'm not going anywhere and my kids know it, right? And as adopted kids, I think they need to keep hearing that 10 times to Sunday, right? They need to know that I'm not going anywhere, no matter what. They
Mm.
will not be abandoned by me, right? Because that's a core fear for a lot of adopted folks. And for my kids, it certainly is. So, yeah, just trying to reframe all that for myself, like calm down, one
There's
step
such
at a time, one breath at a time.
You have that, like, I think a through line throughout our conversation, as well as a potential for your keynotes, is the power, like, that you are a walking embodiment of, is just of the power of showing up as is.
Mhm.
And, that's a hard road for so many, because so many, we have so many shoulds as to how we should show up and whatnot. And it's like, when the past 4 or 5 years as well for me have, like, my mom and I will turn to look at each other and regularly just go, it is what it is. It
Yep.
is it is what it is, and we accept it. It is what it is. And okay, that is what it is. Now, how do we deal with what is, not what we are forecasting as fear, and not what we are projecting as what we wish it could be, but
Yeah.
just taking those steps from the present moment of, like, what needs to change, what needs to adapt, how do we need to approach the relationship to the problem differently? And that it's such a peaceful place, but you have such a testimony of the power of showing up as is, that I think it is one of your superpowers, and it was forged through
Thank
fire.
you. Thank you. That feels very apt. I talk about in my bio that April helped me write. I talk about that I believe in the chaos of creation for all of these parts, right? The creation in our professional lives, the creation of these children and the raising of these children, and creation of stronger and better communities, right? Through all this work that we're trying to do to help each other improve and grow. But like chaos and messiness, those are my themes.
And
And I
I think
in it. I'm not scared of it. I
it's
like
a
it.
beautiful thing to embrace, and it's a different message than I've seen with other keynotes. So many will have a structure of, like, here's your 5-step process of how to deal with it. I think a funny juxtaposition would be your 5-step process to be able to process chaos, but
Right? I mean, that's part of it for me as like an emerging keynote speaker. I've been speaking for 25 years because I was a professor for so long and I was a
Mhm.
filmmaker and I talked to the media. I did all that kind of speaking. But I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to have something to teach, like explicit life lessons. And half the time I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Just stay in there. Which I think is exactly what you're saying. My messages keep showing up.
Keep showing up, show up as is, and just show up. I mean, I think that that's a huge message, and that just doing that is enough. Like,
Yeah.
it really is enough. I mean, I've talked to domestic violence survivors, and they say, just, for their friends, if you know somebody who's in those relationships, just show up. Like, don't
Yeah.
ask them to change
Yes.
anything. Don't ask them,
Yes.
just be there for them, because when they do decide to change, they will know that you got their back. Like, just
Yep.
keep showing up.
Yep.
And I think that that's such a powerful message, especially in this age that we are entering into, that is really stripping most people of the shoulds of, and the would likes and the wantings of, I wish it could be different. No, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And that message in and of itself has so much power behind it, to those who are going through a level of suffering and, like, deep, dark night of the soul, identity shifting,
Yeah.
that you have, through your story, the power to guide them through, just
Yeah.
through your storytelling alone,
Yeah.
without there being some great message, I think, even beyond that. Because I think that is the point,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to show up.
No, I completely agree. And the whole, like you say, I was stuck in the phase for a long time of like, why me? Why our family? Why my child? Well, there's no answer to that.
Yeah.
Is happening. It is what it is. So then what's next? Right. And I was really lucky because I do have friends who just showed up. It was ugly. It was hard. It was really not easy to be my friend, I felt, because I was just really sad for a really long time. And if you're going to go on a hike with me, I will be crying, right? Or you are going to come over to the house. It's messy, and I used to host parties like, no, no, no. Like, I'm not even cooking properly these days, right? And my people they didn't care about any of that. They just wanted to show up as is and show me that they cared about me. And they didn't ask my permission so much, they just
Mhm.
kept coming. And that's a big thing for me. It's like that's what I want people to do for each other. And I feel like there are a lot of barriers to that in our culture, in the busy mother culture. Like, well, I just thought you'd be busy, or
Mhm.
you have so much going on. And I'm like, no, no. And I will admit I'm an extrovert, so it's never going to freak me out if someone shows up at my door. My husband will go scurrying to the back room. I love that. It's like, yeah, just come over and don't ask me what I need. Just come over and do something, bring something, or just be with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bring me art supplies, bring me a meal, help me do a house project. Friends did all of those things when it was the dark night of the soul period. I'm just so grateful, for that. And that's one thing I wish that more folks had in their
I think
lives.
that's an essential asset to community, of just having a community that shows up. I mean, that's the thing that I've just recognized. Like for me, living once we moved to here in Texas, like I'm amazed at the women that have shown up for, and I'm like, we haven't been friends that long. Like, but they're just like, can I bring you a meal? Can I help you with your kids? I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
yes, please. Like, yes, you
Yeah.
can. And thank you. And I think if there's a willingness to also learn that feminine aspect of being able to receive it. Women as well, we've been so programmed with this fierce independence. It's actually a very masculine, unhealed masculine identity of I need to be the one to do it all, to eat, sleep, breathe, nurse the baby, and bring home the bacon, and like all the
100%.
things, without being able to receive the support. And I think that your message of just showing up and also making a conscious effort to just show up for your friends
Yeah.
and cultivate those relationships alone is such a testament, and it's a needed message in this world. So I'm so grateful that you got to share it on the show. And thank you so much for what you're doing and for who you are and for who you've become, because I know it hasn't been easy, but she's fucking awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm really inspired by you and your work. So I'm really glad that you allowed me to come on and chat with you today. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Where can we find you? How can we work with you? How can we book you to come speak at our next conference or a talk or lunch and learn?
Yeah. So I have a website and it's Tricia-Speaks. So it's triciaspeaks.com. And on the website, I talk about my keynote speaking. I do have a landing page for the podcast that I'm on. And as we talked about, very multi-hyphenate, lots of different sort of arenas. Sometimes I'm talking about my film work. Sometimes I'm talking about my mothering journey. Sometimes so you can kind of go and find all the different elements of what I'm interested in when I appear on these various podcasts. So that you can find that on my website as well. I know you don't love social media as a way to, pitch yourself, but I love my Instagram. It's so fun for me. And I think it's partly because I do youth work. So I'm always like, ooh, what's the trending audio? I'm Flocka Films on Instagram. You can find me there. And it's a lot of the work I do in the community with kids. So you can get kind of a flavor of what I'm doing there and the activism and the arts organizing that I'm doing in my local town. A lot of that's on my Instagram. And I also have a page for creative workshops. And that's, for me, that's the ideal companion is like, I love to come in and speak and then do a companion creative workshop for communities. So all of that is on the Tricia Speaks website.
You're amazing, Tricia. I always love to ask my guests, what did you love about our conversation?
Oh my God. Well, I feel like you are incredibly intuitive in a very short time at seeing me and knowing me. And I feel like you gave me insights into kind of what I bring to the game, like what I bring to the world, but what I bring to my keynote speaking and to my work. That feels really validating. I feel really held and supported by you. I feel like you saw me. I loved it.
Means everything. Thank you so much for sharing that. Queens and kings who listen to this show, you know that your story has the power to save at least one life. And if you're anything like Tricia, like her story is saving lives. Like I just know it's going to go so far. You're going to serve so many mothers. And that touches my soul and the heart of like what I do. So thank you for doing what you do. Your story has the power to save at least one life. So go out there, share it boldly, and let your voice be heard.
Queen, if what you just heard stirred something in you, if you are imagining how your voice, your story, your genius could be positioned with the same clarity and magnetism, then it's time. Book your visibility consultation with me today. I will guide you personally through a 7-step communication queen strategy, personalized connections to podcasts that need your voice, and an implementation plan that makes you unignorable. But this isn't for everyone. It's for the visionary who is ready to be seen. If that is you, click the link in the description to book your visibility consultation now. Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.